thank my good friend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a word for what we're witnessing today, and that word is chutzpah.
And there's a word for what we are hearing in this podcast, too, and that word also is chutzpah. May is Jewish American Heritage Month. What a great chance to hear members of the House of Representatives, like Virginia Democrat Jerry Connolly, and members of the Senate speak Yiddish. Specifically, to hear them all say chutzpah, but with a twist you will only get from this podcast. None of the politicians you'll hear in this episode of C-SPAN's The Weekly are Jewish. First, some background. Jewish American Heritage Month was passed by Congress and proclaimed by President George W. Bush starting in May 2006. The month of May was chosen after the 350th anniversary of American Jewish history was marked in May 2004. That celebration was organized by groups such as the American Jewish Archives in Cincinnati, plus the Library of Congress and the National Archives. Since Jewish American Heritage Month was created with the support of Congress, it seems only right that we do something Jewish involving members of Congress. But let's do something only with members of Congress who aren't Jewish, which is, let's hear them say chutzpah. It's a Yiddish word. What does it mean? Well, let's let Congress define it.
There's an old saying that chutzpah is defined as somebody who murdered their parents and then threw themselves on the mercy of the court as an orphan.
That was Newt Gingrich, Republican congressman from Georgia and future Speaker, on September 26, 1991. 2 years later, on August 5, 1993, Democratic Senator from South Dakota Tom Daschle, who was a year away from becoming Minority Leader, thought he had a good definition too.
And now they're saying a plan that genuinely reduces the debt by a greater margin than anything we've had in the past isn't good enough. Well, there are a lot of definitions for chutzpah, but I got to tell you that's one of the best.
Another definition of chutzpah from Nevada Democratic Senator Harry Reid, September 12, 2012.
One after another, the Republicans have stood to complain about how the Senate hasn't gotten a lot done. Mr. President, the presiding officer has been one of the leaders in having a more effective Senate because my friend, the presiding officer, has watched what the Republicans have done. We're going to do something about it. The presiding officer knows that. I know that. What they have done is the very definition of chutzpah. Nerve. What nerve, Mr. President?
Harry Reid was Senate Majority Leader at the time. 2 years later, another Senate leader said chutzpah. Here's Republican Minority Leader Mitch McConnell on January 9, 2014, discussing Obamacare.
The one thing they think can actually distract folks from the misery of this law is the misery of the economic malaise that they've presided over for the last 5 years. I mean, you really have to hand it to them in one respect. It takes a lot of chutzpah to spend an entire presidential term pushing policies that are supposedly meant to help the little guy and then turn around and blame everybody else when they flop.
And once again, here's Democratic Leader Harry Reid, April 10th, 2008.
Senator Leahy and I decided that it's not payback time. We were going to do to the Republicans what they did not do to us, treat them fairly. And we've done that. My friends have criticized the chairman for the pace of judicial confirmations in this Congress. There's a Yiddish word for those Republican complaints, chutzpah. What they have complained about is absolutely without any foundation or basis. In fact, the gall to have them do that.
You heard Senator Reid refer to Pat Leahy, Democratic Senator from Vermont. Pat Leahy also said chutzpah on the Senate floor, December 20th, 1995.
I would like, though, to speak about S-Res 199, because we do have a lot of matters that I don't agree with this session. I think, frankly, this one, S-Res 199 sort of takes the Christmas Goose and Hanukkah Chutzpah award.
By the way, a footnote, If you want to learn more about what Senator Leahy called the Christmas Goose and Hanukkah Chutzpah Award, unfortunately, the congressional record is of little help. It has Senator Leahy saying, a special holiday season award. We'll hear from a few more senators, then go to the House side of Chutzpah. Here's Republican from Texas, Ted Cruz, on January 24th, 2019.
And so it takes some degree of chutzpah to stand up after filibustering funding for the government, as the Democrats did, and to blame the shutdown on the opposing party.
And here's Senator Cruz again on October 29th, 2015.
Instead, the Holder Justice Department appointed in charge of the investigation a major Democratic donor who's given over $6,000 to President Obama and the Democrats. You know, there's a Yiddish word for that, chutzpah.
Senator Cruz is bipartisan in his use of chutzpah. He has said chutzpah when discussing members of his own party, like he did the next year on February 26, 2016, in remarks to the National Religious Broadcasters Convention.
Donald Trump has made illegal immigration the core of his campaign. There is more than a little chutzpah in that, given that Donald Trump, his record on illegal immigration is terrible. Donald Trump had a $1 million court judgment against him for being part of a conspiracy to hire illegal aliens to build Trump Tower.
And our last senator before moving over to the House, February 9th, 2012, Iowa Republican Chuck Grassley.
In the dark of night, Tuesday of this week, the House released its version of the insider trading bill that goes by the acronym STOCK, S-T-O-C-K, which wiped out any chance of meaningful transparency for the political intelligence industry. Now, just think about the chutzpah of people in the House of Representatives, a small group of people taking out the language that I put in that bill when like language is co-sponsored by 288 members of the House of Representatives.
Since Senator Grassley mentioned chutzpah and the people in the House of Representatives, let's hear from a few representatives, like Texas Republican Chip Roy on December 9th, 2020.
We fund, as I said, the tyrant mayors and city councils like Mayor Adler in Austin, Texas, that are killing small businesses. The good mayor had the unbelievable chutzpah to record a video in Cabo San Lucas telling Austin residents to stay home.
And a Republican from the neighboring state of Oklahoma, Tom Cole, September 30th, 2020.
It's my friends that have chosen to craft legislation they know will be unacceptable, they know the president will not sign, and then rail at them for not passing it and the president for not signing it. So that's the height of chutzpah, if you will.
On July 17, 2013, the word was used by a Republican congressman from Illinois, Aaron Schock. But first in this clip, instead of shock and awe, you'll hear shock and wow.
Wow. I'm sure our listening audience at home wonders who to believe. We're hearing charges of politics. We're hearing claims of chutzpah. My friends on the other side of the aisle, this isn't politics. This is lawmaking.
By the way, if you need a quick refresher on what word we're featuring and what that word means and how to pronounce that word, from September 12, 1996, here's Republican Congressman from California, Bob Dornan.
Those of us who were raised in California and in New York, few other big cities, find words like arrogance, gall, the effrontery of it all, they're not strong enough. We must turn to Yiddish, one of the world's most powerfully expressive and emotional languages, the word with great accent, chutzpah.
As for Democrats in the House, we opened with Jerry Connolly saying chutzpah. Here's Congressman Connolly again on July 17, 2019. This time, he uses an adjective you don't normally hear around chutzpah.
Madam Speaker, what we just heard might be described as hyperannuated chutzpah.
We're not exactly sure what the Yiddish equivalent of hyperannuated is. Finally, another Democrat, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut, July 22, 2009.
The fact is, the minority took a $5.6 trillion surplus, and while they controlled this chamber, turned it into a $1.3 trillion deficit. And now they have the chutzpah to look to this side of the room and to criticize our efforts to bring that under control.
Which leads to our bonus clip. We're going to stick to members of Congress, and we're going to stick to members of Congress who aren't Jewish, and we're going to stick with Jim Himes. But we're going to switch up the Yiddish abyssal a bit. We'll still have a Yiddish word that starts with CH, but instead of chutzpah, the word is cholent. That's a slow-cooked stew Jews traditionally eat on Sabbath, prepared the night before because observant Jews don't cook on the Sabbath. And it's a word that was heard on the floor of the House on May 24, 2011. Rabbi Jeremy Wiederhorn from Connecticut was the House guest chaplain that day. But he's not the one who said cholent. It was said by his sponsor, Congressman Jim Himes.
It is a real honor. I know Rabbi Wiederhorn has served as an important leader in Westport and throughout Fairfield County. He has served as a friend to me. I would say that in addition to his spiritual guidance, he introduced me to cholent, which for this Presbyterian was a new experience. I think I thank him for introducing me to that part of his history and culture, if not exactly for the culinary experience.
And that's it for this episode of C-SPAN's The Weekly. A reminder, you could do your own searches in the C-SPAN video library. Just go to cspan.org and use the search bar on top. Spend the rest of May, Jewish American Heritage Month, finding more politicians speaking more Yiddish, and more politicians saying the other politicians have chutzpah. Can't find them all this month? Start up again in June. Thanks for listening, and happy searching!